Foundations of solitude. Prisha met his fingers traced the steel beams in the architectural model, searching for imperfections others would miss. The Mumbai skyline stretched beyond her office window, a testament to human ambition reaching skyward, much like her own life had been an exercise in vertical growth against gravity. The foundation calculations are wrong, she said to the junior, an engineer who had presented the model. Recalculate for seismic activity. Mumbai isn't just building upward, we're building on borrowed time if we ignore what's beneath. The young man nodded nervously and retreated. Prisha knew her reputation preceded her, brilliant but unyielding like the materials she worked with daily. At 34, she had climbed to becoming one of India's most respected structural engineers by understanding one simple truth: structures fall when they depend on weak supports. Her phone buzzed with a message from her assistant. Shah Development's CEO requesting urgent meeting. Says it's about Dharavi renewal. Prisha frowned. Vikram Shah's company had won the controversial bid to transform parts of Dharavi, Asia's largest slum, to sustainable housing. The project was ambitious, politically charged, and precisely the kind of challenge she'd normally avoid due to its emotional complexities. "Tell him I'm not interested," she replied. 20 minutes later, her office door opened without a knock. A tall man with intelligent eyes and a tailored suit that couldn't quite hide his restlessness stood in her doorway. "Miss Mehta, you're difficult to schedule with," he said, his voice carrying the polished tones of international education layered over Mumbai roots. "That's intentional, Mr. Shah. Also, you're trespassing." His smile was unexpected, genuine amusement rather than corporate politeness. "I prefer persistent, like water wearing down stone. Stone remains stone. Water evaporates." She gestured to a chair. "Since you're here, you have 5 minutes." Vikram placed a thumb drive on her desk. "This is the current structural plan for Dharavi Phase 1. Every firm I've consulted says it's sound. I think they're wrong." Prisha raised an eyebrow. "Firing your engineers by using me as the executioner? Not very ethical." "I'm not firing anyone. I'm looking for someone who sees what others miss." His eyes held hers. "Someone told me you grew up in Dharavi before your aunt took you in." The mention of her past felt like a violation. Her childhood in Dharavi, the struggle, the scholarship that became her escape route. The aunt who believed education could transform a life. These weren't facts for business meetings. "Research on me won't win my cooperation, Mr. Shah. It's not a tactic. It's why I'm here." He leaned forward. "Most architects see Dharavi as a problem to solve or profit to make. You might see it differently. And how would you see it? Your family has built luxury towers across 3 continents." Something shifted in his expression, a brief vulnerability that surprised her. "My grandfather was a textile worker in Dharavi. My father never spoke of it. I found out after he died." Prisha studied him, reassessing. "Your 5 minutes are up. Will you look at the plans?" She should refuse. Projects with personal connections were dangerous. They made you care. And caring was a luxury in an industry where decisions affected thousands of lives. Her career had been built on objectivity, on never needing anyone else's approval or support. "I'll review them. No promises." She took the drive. "And Mr. Shah, next time, make an appointment." As he left, Prisha turned back to the Mumbai skyline. Buildings, unlike people, were predictable. You designed them. They stood or they fell based on mathematical certainty. People were structurally unsound. They promised support, then buckled under pressure. That night, reviewing the Dharavi plans, she found the flaw immediately: a critical oversight in the soil composition analysis that could prove catastrophic. She sent a single email. "Your instincts were right. The foundation won't hold. Let's talk." Blueprints of trust. 3 weeks into the Dharavi project, Prisha found herself in an unusual position, second-guessing her decision to join Shah Developments. The temporary project office buzzed with activity as engineers and community representatives discussed modifications to the latest renderings. At the center of the controlled chaos stood Vikram, sleeves rolled up, tie abandoned, gesturing at a 3D holographic model of a proposed community center. "The solar panels need to be angled differently to maximize exposure during monsoon season," he was saying, his passion evident in the quick movements of his hands. "Prisha's calculations show we can increase efficiency by 17% with minimal structural changes." She watched him from across the room, still trying to reconcile the public image of Vikram Shah, business tycoon with a Harvard MBA and reputation for corporate takeovers, with the man who had spent yesterday afternoon sitting with elderly Dharavi residents, listening to their concerns about displacement. Admiring the view, a voice broke into her thoughts. John V. Kapoor, the project's community liaison, appeared beside her with a knowing smile. Monitoring the structural integrity of his arguments, Prisha replied dryly, "Right." John V. laughed. "The same way I monitor nutritional content when I stare at chocolate cake." Prisha changed the subject. "How are the residents responding to the revised compensation packages?" "Better. Since your housing density proposal, it means more families can stay in the area after construction." John V's expression grew serious. "You know, when Vikram first brought you on, people said it was a publicity stunt. Shah hires Dharavi's daughter. But your modifications have made this project actually work for the community." The comment made Prisha uncomfortable. She hadn't told anyone but Vikram about her childhood connections to Dharavi. Who told you that? Vikram mentioned it when advocating for your density proposal to the board. He said your personal insight was invaluable. Janvi must have noticed Prisha's darkening expression. Oh, I've said something wrong. Excuse me, Prisha said, already moving toward Vikram. She waited until the meeting dispersed before approaching him. A word, please. Inside his office, a simple room with glass walls that he insisted promoted transparency, she closed the door. You used my background to sell my ideas to your board. Understanding dawned on his face. Janvi told you. My connection to Dharavi isn't a marketing strategy, Mr. Shah. I never intended. He stopped himself, then started again more carefully. You're right. I apologize. His immediate concession surprised her. In her experience, men in his position rarely admitted fault. Your proposal was accepted on its merits, he continued. But yes, I mentioned your personal insight. It wasn't to exploit your story, but to help them understand why your solution was superior to conventional approaches. Prisha crossed her arms. I've spent my career being judged by my calculations, not my childhood. If word gets out that I'm emotionally involved in this project, you'll be seen as having unique perspective rather than just technical expertise. Vikram challenged. Is that so terrible? In my profession, yes, she met his gaze directly. Women engineers aren't afforded the luxury of appearing emotional about their work. Something shifted in his expression, a new understanding. I hadn't considered that. I'm sorry. The silence between them felt different than their usual charged exchanges. For the first time, Prisya felt he was truly seeing her professional reality. I won't mention it again, he promised. But Prisya's connection to this place isn't a weakness. It's what makes your engineering solutions more human than anyone else's I've seen. Later that evening, after most of the team had left, Prisya found herself alone with the holographic model, making final adjustments to the community center's load-bearing walls. She didn't hear Vikram approach until he placed a cup of chai beside her workstation. Peace offering, he said. I remembered you prefer masala chai over coffee. She accepted the cup, noticing the cardamom aroma. You've been paying attention? I pay attention to things that matter. His voice was quiet in the empty office. Your changes to the center will save us nearly 8 crores while improving structural integrity. That's why you keep me around, she said, returning her focus to the model. One of many reasons. A simple statement hung in the air between them. Prisha found herself searching for the usual warning signals. She'd learned to recognize in men the subtle attempts to claim credit, the veiled condescension, the strategic compliments that preceded requests for concessions. She found none. Instead, she saw genuine respect in his eyes, and something more dangerous, a recognition that felt too much like understanding. I should go, she said, gathering her things. Early meeting tomorrow with the civil engineers. Vikram nodded. About tomorrow, I'd like you to lead the meeting. Your rapport with Engineer Desai is better than mine, and we need his department's full cooperation. Prisha paused. It was a significant gesture, putting her in charge of a critical meeting. Are you sure? Desai is old. He might resist taking direction from the most qualified person on the team. Vikram finished. Let him try. As she left the office, Prisha realized with unsettling clarity that the walls she'd built around her, professional life, the careful isolation that protected her from disappointment, had developed a structural weakness. For the first time in years, she was beginning to trust a collaborator, and the realization terrified her more than any design flaw ever could. Asterisk. Structural collapse. The headlines splashed across every major news outlet in Mumbai by morning. Dharavi. Development scandal. Safety concerns buried. Prisha stared at her phone, scrolling through article after article, each more damning than the last. Anonymous sources claimed she had deliberately overlooked critical flaws in the foundation designed to fast approvals, flaws she had supposedly discovered weeks ago but concealed at the urging of Shah. Developments. When she arrived at the project office, security stopped her. I'm sorry, Ms. Mehta, your access has been temporarily suspended. Inside, through the glass walls, she could see government inspectors examining documents while project team members huddled in small tense groups. No sign of Vikram. Her phone buzzed with a message from Janvi. There, saying you falsified soil testing reports. Board emergency meeting happening now. Another notification appeared. Engineer Desai, whom she'd worked with closely over the past month, had given a statement to the press. We raised concerns repeatedly about Ms. Mehta's methods, but were overruled. The betrayal stung more than the accusation. Desai had never questioned her analysis. In fact, he'd praised her thoroughness just days ago. By afternoon, 3 more colleagues had distanced themselves publicly. Former mentors weren't returning her calls. Even her own firm was issuing a statement reviewing all projects overseen by Mehta in light of recent allegations. Sitting in her apartment that evening, Prisha felt a familiar coldness settling in, the same detachment that had protected her when her parents argued about the cost of her education, when classmates mocked her second-hand uniforms, when professors suggested structural engineering was perhaps too demanding for her. This was why connections were dangerous. They became vulnerabilities when pressure was applied. Her doorbell rang. Through the peephole, She saw Vikram looking more disheveled than she'd ever seen him. She should ignore it. Whatever he had to say wouldn't change anything. Instead, she opened the door. "You shouldn't be here," she said flatly. "Your lawyers would advise against it. I fired them this morning when they suggested we blame you publicly." He looked exhausted. "May I come in?" She stepped aside, against her better judgment. "The soil reports were tampered with," he said without preamble. "Not by you, by someone with access to both our servers and the municipal approval system." Raghav Oberoi, Prisha said immediately. Vikram's deputy had opposed her involvement from the beginning. Vikram nodded. "He's been working with Greenfield Developments. They lost the bid for Dharavi and have been trying to sabotage the project since day one. You have proof." "Getting it. But the board is demanding immediate action. They want to cancel the project entirely, cut losses. Save face. So you're here to tell me I'm the sacrifice?" Her voice remained steady, unsurprised. "No." His response was fierce. "I'm here because I refused to throw you under the bus, and now they're threatening to remove me as CEO unless I distance myself from both you and the project." Prisha let out a bitter laugh. "And what did your grandfather's son decide?" Something flashed in his eyes, pain, determination. She couldn't tell. "I told them I'd rather lose the company than my integrity." The words hung between them. In any other man's mouth, they would have sounded like empty platitudes. But standing in her living room, with everything he'd built over 15 years hanging in the balance, Vikram looked like a man who had finally found his foundations. "That's a poor business decision," she said quietly. "I'm not making a business decision." His eyes held hers. "Prisha, I need your help to expose what really happened. I can't fight both Raghav and the board without your engineering expertise to prove the tampering." It was the first time he had said he needed her, not her skills, not her background, but her. And despite everything rational telling her to stay clear of the collapsing structure that was Shah Developments, she found herself nodding. "I'll need access to the original server backups and municipal filing timestamps." Relief washed over his face. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," she warned. "If we're wrong, we're both finished in this industry. If we're wrong, we deserve to be." He extended his hand. "Partners." She hesitated only briefly before taking it. "Partners." Reinforcement. Dawn broke over Mumbai's. Prisha and Vikram hunched over laptops in her apartment, eyes burning from hours of scouring digital records. Coffee cups littered the table alongside takeout containers and handwritten calculations. "There," Prisha pointed to her screen. "The file metadata shows edits made to the soil composition report after my digital signature was applied. The editing computer's MAC address matches Raghav's workstation." Vikram rubbed his eyes. "It's compelling but circumstantial. We need something definitive." "What we need," Prisha said, stretching her stiff shoulders, "is access to the Municipal Building Commission's original receipt of our filing. If it shows the unaltered report was submitted and later replaced, we have our proof, which means we need someone inside the commission." Vikram's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and grimaced. "The board meeting is moved up to noon today. They're not waiting for my defense." Prisha watched him absorb another blow without flinching. Over the past 72 hours, she had witnessed Vikram lose nearly everything. His executive team had abandoned him. Investors were pulling out of other projects, and his family name was being dragged through tabloids. Yet his concern remained focused on clearing her name and salvaging the housing project. "Why are you still fighting for this?" she asked quietly. "You could walk away, start fresh with your reputation mostly intact." He looked up from his phone, surprise evident in his expression. "The same reason you design buildings to withstand earthquakes that might never come, because doing the right thing isn't conditional on convenience." The simple sincerity of his answer caught her off. All her life, Prisha had been waiting for people to reveal their true motives, to confirm her belief that self-interest ultimately drove everyone's decisions. Vikram's actions defied that expectation consistently. Her phone rang, a number she didn't recognize. She answered cautiously. "Ms. This is Aditya from the Municipal Commission. We met during the initial Dharavi approval process." The young clerk sounded nervous. "I saw the news. Something didn't add up, so I checked our secure archive. The original soil report you submitted doesn't match what's in the current file." Prisha's heart raced as she put the call on speaker. "Aditya, would you be willing to provide a statement confirming this?" A pause. "My supervisor is Raghav Oberoi's cousin. I'd lose my job." Vikram leaned forward. "This is Vikram Shah. I understand your concern, but thousands of families' futures depend on this project being completed safely and honestly. Whatever happens, I promise you'll have a position at Shah Developments." Another pause, longer this time. "Send me your email. I'll forward the original receipt and archived file copy. But please, keep my name out of it as long as possible." After the call ended, Prisya and Vikram looked at each other, a cautious hope building between them. "We need to move quickly," she said. "The board meeting will happen without me," Vikram finished, already gathering his things. "I'm going to the press with this information the moment Odita's email arrives. Better to fight in public than behind closed doors." By noon, the story had shifted dramatically. News channels that had condemned Prisha days earlier now praised her integrity. Shah Development's board found themselves facing uncomfortable questions about their hasty rush to judgment. Rogov Oberoi was seen being escorted from Greenfield's offices by police. Standing in her apartment that evening, watching the coverage, Prisha felt oddly detached from the vindication playing out on screen. Her focus kept returning to Vic, who had declined all interview requests and instead issued a simple statement, supporting the investigation and reaffirming commitment to the Derivative project. Her doorbell rang again, becoming a pattern, she thought, as she opened it to find Vikram standing there, looking both exhausted and energized. "The board wants to meet with both of us tomorrow," he said. "They're offering reinstatement and a public apology. Will you accept?" He shrugged. "Depends on their terms. I'm insisting on complete autonomy for the Derivative project and your appointment as chief structural director with an independent budget." Prisha studied him. This man who had risked everything, not just for her reputation but for what she represented, integrity in an industry that often sacrificed it for profit. "Why?" she asked simply. Vikram met her gaze steadily. "Because some foundations are worth building on." The words hung between them, laden with meaning that extended far beyond professional respect. For the first time in her adult life, Prisha found herself without the protection of her carefully constructed walls. Facing a truth she had denied for weeks, Vikram Shah had become essential to her own structural integrity. "Would you like to come in?" she asked, stepping aside. "I think we have plans to discuss." His smile as he crossed her threshold felt like the beginning of something neither of them had designed, but both had somehow been building toward all along. New Horizons. 1 year later, Prisha stood at the edge of the completed first phase of the Derivative renewal project, watching families receive keys to their new homes. Children raced through the central courtyard where drought-resistant native plants created natural play areas. Solar panels gleamed on rooftops, while community elders gathered beneath shade structures designed to collect rainwater. "Admiring your handiwork," Vikram appeared beside her, dressed casually in a simple kurta rather than his one signature suits. "Our handiwork," she corrected, accepting the cup of chai he offered. "Though I'm still not convinced about the roof gardens. The maintenance will be challenging." He smiled, familiar now with her tendency to assess potential failures even in moments of success. "The resident committee has already organized a rotation schedule for garden maintenance. Apparently, your structural reinforcement created the perfect growing conditions." The past year had transformed more than just this corner of Dharavi. Shah Developments had emerged from scandal as an industry leader in ethical urban renewal, while Prisha had launched her own engineering consultancy specializing in sustainable solutions for dense urban environments. Their professional collaboration had flourished despite predictions that two strong personalities would inevitably clash. Their personal relationship had evolved with similar unexpectedness. The walls Prisha had maintained throughout her life hadn't come down all at once, but rather been carefully dismantled and repurposed, much like the materials from the original Derivative structures that now formed artistic elements throughout the new development. "The community center dedication is starting," Prisha noted, checking her watch. "We should head over." As they walked through the complex, residents greeted them by name. An elderly woman pressed sweets into their hands, blessing the couple who had fought for her family to remain in the neighborhood they had called home for generations. The community center stood at the heart of the development, a three-story structure with flowing lines that echoed traditional Indian architecture while incorporating modern sustainability features. Unlike the luxury towers Vikram had once built, or the purely functional structures Prisha had engineered, this building represented something new for both of them, design born from purpose rather than profit or mere utility. Before entering, Vikram touched her arm gently. "There's something I need to show you first." He led her to a small garden behind the center where a simple stone had been installed. Inscribed upon it were words in Hindi, English, and Marathi. "Foundations matter. Dedicated to those who taught us to build with integrity." Vikram's grandfather Rohan Shah, textile worker of Dharavi 1925 to 1980, and Prisha's parents Aditi and Navin Mehta, who sacrificed so their daughter could build a better world. Prisha stared at the stone, momentarily speechless. She had mentioned her parents only once to Vikram during a late night when designs and deadlines had given way to rare personal revelations. "When did you last week?" "I wanted it to be a surprise." His voice was gentle. "Is it all right? I can change it." If she silenced him with a kiss. Public displays of affection still rare enough between them to surprise onlookers. "It's perfect," she whispered against his cheek. Inside, the dedication ceremony began with community leaders speaking about transformation and preservation, how the project had managed the near impossible task of honoring Dharavi's spirit while creating safer, healthier living conditions. When it came time for Prisha and Vikram to speak, they approached the podium together. The audience, a mix of residents, officials, and media, watched as two people once known for their individual achievements stood as partners a year ago. Vikram began, "When this project was nearly destroyed by corruption and doubt. Many people asked why we continued fighting for it. The answer was simple: because foundations matter." Prisha continued where he left off, their thoughts flowing together with practiced ease. "What we build, whether relationships, communities, or structures, depends entirely on what we build upon. Truth, respect, integrity. These aren't just words. They're the bedrock beneath everything worth creating. As she spoke, her eyes moved from the audience to Vikram, finding in his gaze the same recognition that had startled her that first day. In her office, someone who truly saw her, not as a collection of achievements or potential advantages, but as herself. Later, walking home to the apartment they now shared overlooking the development, Vikram laced his fingers through hers. "What next?" he asked, a question that had become their ritual when completing projects. Pryshaw considered the horizon, both the literal skyline and the figurative future stretching before them. For someone who had spent her life believing solitude was the only safe foundation, the past year had been an architectural impossibility, a structure that grew stronger, not weaker, with connection. "Something we haven't designed yet," she answered. "Something that will last." She felt his smile more than saw it as dusk settled over Mumbai, a city of contrasts and connections, much like themselves. The engineer who calculated every risk had finally discovered that some equations couldn't be solved on paper. Some structures were meant to be lived in, tested by time, reinforced through experience. Their footsteps aligned as they walked toward home, to people who had learned that needing someone didn't mean losing yourself, but rather finding the missing counterbalance that made you stand stronger against whatever storms might come.